morning. A year ago, Susan and I were travelling in New Zealand. It was a beautiful place, many things to see and much beauty to behold. Very different from Australia and just lovely. One of the places we visited deep in the south was a little town called Tiano, which is built on a lake. And it's kind of like the heartland or the entrance to the Fjordlands. And from there we visited Milford Sound with its majestic cliffs and mists and waterfalls and absolute beauty. But little Tiano was set on a lake with mountains in the background. And we watched a couple of nights we were there, the sun setting over the mountains, through the mountains, across the lake, filling it with golden, red and orange light. In the mornings it was different again, and the last morning we were there in particular, we went for a walk, and it was early and the clouds, the long white clouds were across the lake, and mists, and the water was aqua blue, beautiful. And as we walked around, some golden sunlight filtered through, and it was just beautiful. We walked around the top end of the lake, and further along there was this jetty that went out into the water. And we walked up and down the jetty a bit and looked out. And then I stood at the back of the jetty and I took some photos out with the jetty in the foreground, looking out across this majestic beauty, this wonder. It's one of my favourite photos. It was at this jetty going out into the uncertainty, out into the mystery, out into the mists. And as I looked at that photo again and again and again, I imagined it not as a jetty with an ending, but as a bridge into the unknown, into the mystery and wonder of life. And as I pondered this and reflected on my own life and things I'm learning about letting go and what that means, and the fact that life is not something we can control and define. We can't neatly define where we're going or what's going on. We don't have a whole lot of control that we think we have. As I reflected on this photo many times since, a poem emerged. It's called A Bridge to Somewhere. Let me read it for you. I'm on a bridge to somewhere, a future I cannot dream. With each step I rise through sunlit skies of mauve and tangerine. Beneath my feet the colours dance across the silky sea. Where I go I do not know, through clouds of mystery. I'm on my somewhere bridge, meandering my way along. I pause and stare, suddenly aware I don't know the words to my song. I can't sing the song of sunrise, nor the tune to guide my day. I search around for a sight or sound, something to reveal my way. I'm on my mystery bridge, I'm lost and losing control, feeling naked and raw, no longer sure of the story to feed my soul. I continue on to I don't know where, letting go and drifting along. In faith's embrace, a surrender to grace as I yearn for spirit's song. I'm on a bridge to somewhere, a future I cannot dream. I'm loosing control to release my soul into the spirit's living stream. The journey I'm on is one of descent through the shadows and darkness of pain. Then beyond chaos and strife, I rise into new life to start my journey again. The bridge is the journey of faith, a journey into vast unknown, a releasing of self, a surrender to death and the fear of being alone. On the bridge my old story is lost, and a new one forms in my soul, a cruciform song, soft and strong, of a love to grow me whole. That poem is a reflection for me of life, of the realization that I don't have control, that at any moment something can happen that takes me in a different direction, somewhere I didn't understand or expect or know. A visit to the doctor, some sudden health crisis, something in a relationship, some new experience, news of the world and the fear of what's happening and the impacts of geopolitical issues across the world. Or the pain I feel when I see the stories or hear the stories of people suffering. we don't have that control. And I think it's an Easter poem, because in Easter, the story we hear and understand is a story that reflects the truth of life. We don't have control. And Easter is about learning to let go. It's about loosening our sense of control, or our need to control, or our belief that we have control, of letting go and living into faith. And Easter is about faith. It's about a transcendent God who breaks in to our earthly existence in surprising and profound ways that we can't define or detail or understand. It's the mystery of the journey into the unknown, of walking on that bridge to somewhere through the mists and the clouds of mystery that surround us and confuse us and scare us. But on we go anyway, because that's what faith invites us into. That's what love invites us into. And the story that we read this week is from John's story of Jesus. That night of resurrection, where we've heard stories of Mary in the garden, of the disciples running to the tomb, of belief and faith and uncertainty and confusion. And here on this night, disciples are locked away in a room behind locked doors and solid walls, keeping the world and the darkness out to protect them. And it's into this grief and loss and pain and overwhelming despair and confusion and uncertainty that this risen Christ materializes in their midst. It says, "Peace be with you. Peace be with you." In the midst of your grief and your loss, in the midst of all that's happened, in the midst of the anguish and the despair and the anger and the pain, and peace be with you. And then breathes on them the Spirit of God. And this is a theme through John's story, this Spirit that's there in the beginning, that moves through, that blows where it will, that will come and bring strength and guidance and comfort and empowerment. This Spirit of life, of God, of vitality. The Spirit that was breathed into humans in that beginning story, the dust that formed humans, and God's Spirit breathed into them, brings life. And Jesus is breathing new life into them. That's the experience of resurrection. Having new life breathed into us, the Spirit of God, touching us, filling us. And in the midst of what we experience, the belief that we can live again in a new way. That's what this story is about. And then he commissions them. Go into the world and be people of reconciliation. Go into the world fulfilling my mission and be people of forgiveness. Forgive. When you forgive others, they are forgiven, they are loosened. The sins, the binds, the things that tie them down will be released. Liberation, freedom, hope, peace. If you don't, it won't happen. And we have a world like we do with people dropping bombs and flowing missiles at one another, of people shooting up enemies in the streets, of violence in homes. Violence is the way of the world, and the way of Jesus is the way of peace and reconciliation and forgiveness, and we're invited into this way. And for John, this is the fulfillment of what Jesus promises. For Christian communities, they were awaiting Jesus to return to bring this new peace to the world, to inaugurate God's reign. And John says, no. Jesus commissions us to bring that reign in his strength and his power, gives us the Spirit, that when we go out and forgive and release, the world will change and there will be life and hope and peace. God will work through us. The second part of the story, we're told in retrospect that Thomas is not there. Thomas is this figure in John's story that asks hard questions and expresses doubt and uncertainty and confusion. And here he says, I want to believe you guys, but unless I touch and feel and see, I can't. Probably expressing the questions that people in John's community are expressing, but how can we believe? How can we believe what they back there experienced? And John has this story happen. It's almost word for word. They're in this locked room. Jesus materializes, says, "Peace be with you." But then calls forth Thomas and presents the scars and says, "Touch." But Thomas doesn't need to. He's received the peace, the blessing. And in this moment where love encounters him, where love names him, he believes and confesses. And this is what we're invited to do. Love knows our name, knows our face, and loves us. It calls us by name and invites us into new life. And that's what we're invited into. In a world of pain, in a world of grief and loss, in a world that's fighting each other, in a world of violence, in a world where climate change threatens everything, where wars and violence threaten everything, where people are confused and lost and seeking to wealth and power and status and anything else they can to define and control life, we're invited to let go and enter into this way of faith. A bridge to somewhere, to the mystery of being in God. And these guys behind me, St. Francis and Gandhi, are figures for me who invite me into this way of simplicity, of trust, of hope, of faith, of living in ways that are liberating and freeing for myself, for others, and for the world. And this is what Easter's about. Will you follow? Will you join in?